Okay, I kind of threw you guys a curveball yesterday saying that we were going to flow and spine and all that in one video. Ran a little bit long, so what you got in the first one was the weighing and the spining. In the second video, this next one coming up, you're going to get the flowing and the frequency matching. And what we do with that is you're going to see how I frequency match and then what it means for flowing. And I've busted up a myth or two while we were doing it. So stay tuned and learn a little something about the frequency match and the spining. Okay, welcome back to the McGolf shop. In part 2, we're going to talk about the frequency and we're going to talk about the spining. Now, what we do is we take our shafts and we get initial measurement and we trim the first one until we get to the frequency that we desire, and that gives us our stepping stones into the next one, meaning that we cut a little bit more for the next head, a little bit more for the next head, and so on and so forth, all based on the weights of the heads. Right now what we've got is, and then once that's done, with the spine in its alignment, we do the flowing, which is flatline oscillation. You pull down on it and watch it twang, and you'll see it in the video. And then I get to show you a few more tricks in there. Part 3 is going to be the finishing part, where we have the, we check the glue, we finish the ferrules, cut it to length, and put on the grip. So enjoy the rest of what's part 2, and we'll go from there. All right, now I'm going to switch it back around, and we're going to try and make a frequency out of this stuff. I'm going to adjust you back up. And we're going to travel back around to where we were before. All right, we're into the frequency part of it now. And what we do is we start with the lightest shaft and the lightest head put together. And you see it's pretty hard to flex it when you got that. So what I like to do is get a piece of fishing line. A piece of fishing line. I don't think you can see it's as clear, but you see how far my fingers are. That's about the size piece I use. Always have a piece of wood in the shop so you can put your shafts on it. And I stick it in between here. And now it's in there, and now it doesn't spin. Alright, I find that mark I just made, put it up, put it in my ruler so I know what length I'm working with. And I already know that I want to start with a standard length for this gentleman. And here we go. We go right here, we mark our length, and this is just to see where we got to start cutting. I put it in my Golfworks laser frequency machine. You hear that clicking? That's a clutch. I love clutches because that way you're applying the same pressure every time, because it will affect the flex. Okay, 279, 7.5, and I'm right at about a 3.0. 1, 2, 3. I need to go up about 1.5 flexes. So for me, that's about 1.5 inches. So I measure out 1.5 inches down here on the tip. I go cut it. So you can hear some noise. Alright, made the cut. And sometimes what happens is when you make the cut you get slag. And you got to sand that off. And you sand it off with either your hand sanding it or use the machine like we have. And when I get to the very last one, I'll show you how I did that. You can also cut with a tubing cutter. They're very smooth, but they leave the end a little rounded, but better than the alternative. Some folks have tried to use the grit saw, but that is a lot of work and a lot of cost. So I wouldn't necessarily go with that. Alright, and the opposite is if you're doing graphite, people have tried to use regular saws and had a fiasco. The end looks like it's been ran through a grinder. Now that's where the rod saw or the grit saw really comes and shines through. You would do okay with that if you're trying to do it by hand. If not, use a cutoff wheel. Alright, let's see what we got now. Well, that got me up almost where I want to. I'm going to cut another. This is the part where we find out what it's going to take to get to this frequency. Alright, and I'm going to take maybe, well, if I take another half, that would be the one flex. I'm going to take an inch off. So we're at 2.5 inches now. Alright, now it's important to keep the amount that you tip trim out because each shaft has its own way of tip trimming. Some will say 1/2 inches, some will say 5/8. Just check with the manufacturer and kind of follow those guidelines. Is it a guarantee that you will get the right frequency if you don't have a machine? The answer is absolutely not. But that's the reason why we would do it like this, in order to guarantee that frequency. Back into the machine we go. And I only give it 2 clicks. That's more than enough to hold it. Make sure my arrow is on. Alright, so we got a little bit up there, we'll see. What I'm doing is I'm resetting because it had an out of scale. Alright, let's see. Hey, that's perfect. Right where I wanted to be. 294 gets me to right in the middle of the regular range. So now I've got that. Here's where we go on to doing the flowing. Flowing is flat line oscillation. All right, with the hard side up, because that's the way I like it to bend. I'll use the book. Hopefully you can see the line. See how it goes straight up and down? That means that's the flat line oscillation. So that means that this shaft is going to act the same each time. Now, here's where you're going to get a lot of discussions between club makers. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, I say it can't hurt. You always get the, well, everybody says, well, a golfer doesn't make a consistent swing. Well, how can you expect them to make a consistent swing with inconsistent equipment? We're doing it, we're building in a ton of consistency when we do that. So that's not a problem whatsoever for me. I think we're doing a pretty good job. And the next one, I'll show you. Everybody talks about this way, and they always want to get into how it swings. And I'll show you a little trick after that one. So remember, we took 2.5 off. So this time we're going to go to 3, because it's a slightly heavier head, so we need to take a little bit more off for the same flex. Alright, a little bit of this. The fishing line tip is a good tip. You need to get the 0.100 filament, and you can get any size roll. I bought the like 100. What was it? What can you get? It's a 10-pound test. It's very close. I got 700 yards, and it lasted me nearly 10 years. I just recently got me a new one, so not a bad buy. All right. So for the next one. Alright, the 2 clicks, head straight up. We go to 37, we go up to 4.5. That's 296, 298. Oh wait. Oh good, glad I looked. 298. Perfect. We are dead on again. Alright, so back to this guy. Try and find the flow one more time, and then I'm going to show you the trick. Everybody's like, oh my god, it only goes one way. Really? Well, let's see what we can find out. Pull that out there so hopefully you guys can see that. Let's see if you can see that or not. I think you can. See how it goes up and down? Watch this. Look at that. Oh, look at that. It flat lines both ways. So you get it going my way, you get both of them in there. How about that? Then what I do is I make the mark. And this ensures that it's in line the proper way each time. Alright, off camera I go. Alright, so we're running pretty good. So that I'm not boring you at every time, you're gonna do this and I'm gonna speed it on up. So here we go. But everything is pretty much the same. Once you get the first one down, you just keep following that same pattern and you keep checking your chart versus your machine. Alright, now not all machines are the same, not all charts are the same, but whatever is yours, and that's what you build to. Okay, you don't worry about what mine reads, you worry about what yours reads and how you make it for your people when you're doing the fittings. And even from the same brand, sometimes they're off maybe 2 or 3 cycles. Well, 2 or 3 cycles is half of a flex. If you're being very precise, that's a little too, you can't go from one to the other. And you just got to know those differences and how that they would read. Okay, so we're done here with this one. That was the clean side kind of work. Now we're going to go get dirty on the dirty side. So give me a minute to set up for that one. Okay, we're on the dirty side, and what we're going to do here, this is how I set them up so I know which ones I've done. So now what we got to do is we have to prep the tip. And we do that, we got to take the heads off first, and you just keep them one in front of the other, that way you never lose track. If anybody wants to know what I'm setting these against, this is the metal roofing supports. You can get them at any Lowe's or store, and you just glue them on with the epoxy that you can build with. Alrighty, so what I do is I'll take this over to the belt sander and I'll turn it, and I see where I made the mark from when I put on the head, so I know that's all the further I need to go. So it's a twofer. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do all these real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll start gluing them on. Okay, so this is what you end up with, a nice abraded piece of the shaft. And we need that for the epoxy to fill into the little micro grooves that we made in order for it to hold on, so when you put the head in, that they work together. So that's the reason why we did it like that. So then we make sure that all the slag is off of it, and then it's nice and clear. And get that one out. That one got away. Alright, now let's make some glue. Alright, the epoxy I use is a 24-hour glue because it has the greatest shear strength. Make sure you can see this. There we go. It has the greatest shear strength, but it also has the longest cure time. You can make it go faster, but what you do is you give up a little bit of strength, or a little more, or you give it a little more brittle, make it a little more brittle in order to gain your strength or your speed. So it said 50-50 epoxy. So what it is, it's the same, whatever amount of the epoxy plus whatever amount of the hardener. Alright. Then we take a stir stick, and I go for about a minute. Now they do have other glues that have different cure times. Cure time is when it's actually fully hardened. They also have what's called a gel time. And the gel time is for when you can be, when it's usable, like you can bring it up and you can start working with it and let it set after that. So if you're really high volume, gel time is an important key to understand. And there are some, we have this 24-hour epoxy. There's some that's a 30-minute epoxy. And there's some that is a 5-minute epoxy. So you just, depending on what you want to use it as. Shorter cure times for stuff that really needs to be done quick. And I'll use even quicker if I'm doing maybe a putter, because it doesn't have as much strain on it as a regular golf club or even a driver. Alright, now what I'm putting on here is called Quick Center, and it's basically really teeny weeny blasting beads. I don't normally put a whole bunch in there, just enough to kind of coat the top. What that does is that when I stir it in, those beads get coated with the epoxy, and then when I put it on the shaft and I put it in the head, and I spin it around, it tends to center it in the shaft a little bit more. Is it teeny weeny? Yes, it is, but again, it's that another level of consistency. Alrighty, so what he's decided on is the blue ferrule. Likes the blue color. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, another tip. Always just get a dab of glue going and run your ferrule in there. It acts as a lubricant to move it up there, and then it's also a sealer so you don't get that ferrule creep like you see when you leave your clubs in the car overnight or in the middle of the sun. And your trunk can get up well over 200 degrees, and some of this epoxy breaks down around 240. So if you're finding out that you have a dark colored car, and so I'm going to interrupt. Now make sure you got plenty of glue in there and plenty of glue on there. Just get a little dab to keep it going. So anyway, back to the trunk. You can get over 200 degrees, and that can break down your epoxy. So if you find that you're really moving, your heads are starting to move, or your ferrules are starting to slide, that you really probably ought to watch where you're storing it. All right, I got it on there. Now I want to wipe it off, wipe the excess glue off. I just run it around. Make sure it stays there. There we go. The more you can get wiped off, the less cleaning you have to do later, just like in woodworking. All right, so then I get a piece of masking tape. Here's another tip. Get it up there, tape it on, then you're going to let it glue in this position. So I have my drying rack right up here, and we're going to go do another one. So real quickly, get my dab going, get my ferrule on, press it down, a little bit of epoxy on the end. You don't have to get it all gooby and coated. That's going to be more than enough. And then you spin it on pretty good, line up my lines, tap it into seat, and then you wipe off the excess. And this one had a whole bunch of extra. If you've got a lot of extra, you might have to use 2 of these tissues. There we go. And done with that. Get my piece of tape. There we go. Give it a little stretch. Set it right to the next one. All right, so we're just going to keep doing that over and over again. So you might get bored watching it a couple of times. You might ask, why do I seat it? Because I like making sure, you know, what you can do every once in a while. When this glue is drying, it gives off an exothermic reaction. Exothermic reaction creates heat. Sometimes, although not always, it can cause the ferrule or the head to move up the shaft. And if I have my tape on there, it prevents that from happening. All right, another thing I learned while taking my classes from Jim Yananich, that if you ever get any epoxy on you, which I don't yet, thank goodness, is that you better stop and immediately go wipe it off, because that stuff gets everywhere, and typically you'd never notice it until it's too late. So if you ever feel like you get the epoxy on you, just stop, go use some dishwater, and wipe it off, and then come back. If you're wondering what these little squares are, they're nothing but paper towels that I hand cut into some 2x2 squares. I use 2x2 because it seems to work for me and my maneuverability. I use it for wiping off excess epoxy. I use it for wiping off dirt off of golf clubs, all kinds of stuff. And that little dee was my wife coming into the shop, the heart and soul of McGolf. She keeps me busy, and we keep making golf clubs. That'd probably be a pretty good logo right there for us. She keeps me busy, and we keep making golf clubs. Okay, so you got to see us weigh, you got to see us measure, you got to do spines, you got to do flowing, got to do frequency matching, and you got to see how we glue. And if you're looking, right here is what I use to braid the tips of the shaft. And when you want to do the tip, you turn into the rotation. You turn into the rotation. And then you got to see the gluing, how we put the epoxy together, why we use what we use, and how it got in there and how we wipe it off. Now we got an overnight. We got to wait 24 hours and or get through the gel time. So same time tomorrow, I'm going to come over here. We're going to do some ferrule finishing, which is already on my YouTube channel. And then we're going to bend them and cut them to length and put some grips on and clean them up, and you'll get to see the finished product. So I might break this down into different ones. However, if you like what you saw, please like the video. If you want to know more, want to see more, subscribe. It's all about showing you guys about club making, and we're going to do some product reviews. So into the next one, while we're finishing, I'm going to talk about the Wishons, and we'll talk about the KBSs, and we'll talk about the Piers. And again, thank you for visiting the McGolf channel, and let's see those scores go low.